Jesus fucking Christ. Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to Canine Cannibalism. Today, we are going to be taking a look at The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. The book is, drumroll please, 273 pages, broken up into 5 parts, plus an epilogue, so 6 parts. Those parts are further broken up into 47 chapters. This copy includes 2 what I believe are short stories. I did not read them. I will not be reviewing them in this video. They are both by Jack Ketchum. One is called Do You Love Your Wife? The other is called Returns. From what I know, they're in other collections of his work. This copy also includes an author's note about the book, and then there is an interview at the end between some interviewer and Ketchum, as well as the 2 screenwriters who wrote the movie version of this book. And that is what's in here. Very quickly, a blurb. I will just tell you what the back says. A teenage girl is held captive and brutally tortured by neighborhood children, and it is based on a true story. Very loosely based on a true story, but based on a true story. Now, before we get into like really depressing shit, new mask so that I can see, because I wear glasses and it's kind of hard to do this shit without my glasses on, and the other masks that I was wearing made it difficult to wear glasses. So this makes it a lot easier. Background. Tried to find a black blanket that I could hang up that would allow me to put up white text if I ever needed to, like trigger warnings, that kind of stuff. Because sometimes when I do that, it kind of fades out a little bit when it's up over here in this area because of the tapestries and shit on the back wall. Bought a 2-yard version. Way that it was sold on Amazon made it seem like it would be a square. It was not. And clearly that wasn't long enough anyway. Clearly I need to buy the 3 or 4-yard version because I wanted this to be covered and I wanted that to be covered. But right now, it's not. So it's a work in progress. It should fix itself at some point. Okay. Let's get into the book. Fair warning, I took... It's been a while since I've read this, actually. I finished this before the 25th of October. And this is now being released on the 10th of November. I'm recording this on the 6th of November. Sorry, no, this video is being released on the 25th of November. I'm recording this on the 6th. I finished reading it before the 25th. So, partly that is because I had other videos in the works, those crossed videos, and I didn't want to like overwhelm myself with media. And also, I needed a couple of days to decompress after reading this. And then also, I've been sick for the last week. And my voice is still kind of fucked up. Because I'm still sick. But it's better. I'm not blowing my nose every 10 seconds. Anyway, let's get into this. So, I'm going to give you a trigger warning. If you were to pick up a copy of The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum and read it, you would find all of the following. You have your torture, your mutilation, and your death. No gore in this one. None of that. None of the uber violence. There is genital mutilation in this, and self-harm as well. There is also sexual abuse in this book, including sexual assault, rape, and incest. There's child abuse, because everything bad that happens in the book happens to a child. There is some stuff with feces, including the ingestion of feces, and then also people being pissed on. So, my thoughts. This book is fucked up. This book made me sad. It didn't make me cry, it just made me very depressed. The reason I finished the book so quickly after reading all of the crossed books is because I knew what was going to happen. The fucking blurb tells you what's going to happen. I'm familiar with the story. I'm familiar with the real life story, which I will not be getting into because that's a whole thing. Just know that everything that I talk about happening in this book happened to a real girl, and it was somehow so much worse. Not somehow. Everything in real life is always worse. The human depravity is always the next step up from anything that you can imagine in any of these books. But just know that the real story is so much worse, far more depressing than this book. So the woman who carried out the crimes in real life got out of prison in the 80s. Yeah, it's far worse. Anyway, the book is very depressing. I knew that going into it. I was still so not ready for just how depressing it was. I got halfway through, and then my partner was asleep, and I read to them for them to go to sleep sometimes, and I was about halfway through the book, and that's when the abuse starts, and I sat up and read up through the big climax, and then I went to bed, and then the next day I read the last two chapters. Um, it is, yeah, it's very depressing. It is eloquently written, in my opinion. I enjoy Ketchum's writing. I have yet to find a book of his that I didn't enjoy the writing of. I've had some plot issues with specifically Offspring. I had some plot issues, but his writing itself, his prose is wonderful. I enjoyed the story direction of this book, which I is kind of fucked up to say considering it's based on a true story, but again, we're just not going to touch on that very much. I will again say very loosely based on the true story. There's a lot of creative liberty in the book. It doesn't make it any less horrifically tied to truth. But let's actually touch on that for a second. I like how I said I wasn't going to fucking touch on the. By not touching on it, I mean I'm not going to actually describe the crime to you. There's probably 100,000 other channels that have already done that. In relation to the book, I will talk about it, and we'll just get it all out of my system now. I was worried going into this is that I was going to feel that this was disrespectful to the actual crime. Um, like think really underground death metal where they like just sing about a rape and murder that happened and it's just kind of distasteful. I was kind of concerned about that. I know that's a criticism of this book. I have seen that criticism. Personally, I would say that it is far enough removed that it isn't disrespectful. And it doesn't feel like it's exploitative or profiting. I mean, it's definitely exploitative, but not in that way. It is exploitation literature. It's just not distasteful. So I was concerned going into it that that would be the case. It's not. I found myself not concerned about that at all while reading. This book is what I would consider a masterclass in suspense, in anxiety. Um, it's very Romeo. I really do hate to compare a splatterpunk novel to Shakespeare, but I go back to high school literature and the whole thing of Shakespeare tells you in the first sentences that Romeo and Juliet will die, and then still when they die you're sad. Obviously, modern people usually aren't sad when they die, but back in the time that it was written, it was very depressing. This is kind of similar in style to that, where you know from the get go what's going to happen, and building up to it is really just the terrifying part. It's just awful. Just waiting because you know what is going to happen and there's nothing that can be done about it. There's no wiggle room about like how the story's going to end. And then it happens and it's almost like a weight lifted off kind of. Yeah, that's kind of the best way to describe it. It is extremely suspenseful and anxiety inducing getting up to the final parts. Again, I read up until the climax um, before I stopped. After I read one session, I read like the first two chapters, and then I read from the second chapter through the 45th or 46th chapter, and then stopped. And yeah, I mean, it's I really there's no other way to describe it than just depressing. It's a very sad book. Um, that's really all I have to say review-wise for now. But with that said, let's jump into a plot summary. Major spoiler warning, I'm going to tell you loosely what happens in the book. I didn't write down a full summary. I'm just going off of memory here, because not a lot happens in the book. As as awful as that may be to say after going on such a fucking long ass rant about how depressing the book is, not a lot happens. We will get into it. There's a kid, and I don't even remember his fucking name actually. There's a boy. He lives in a neighborhood, and he is best friends with a kid who lives next door. The kid has a brother, and two brothers actually. One of them's a little kid. His name's Woofer, and then there's the two older brothers. There's a Junior, and then there's D name. I don't remember his name. Doesn't matter. And they live in the house of a woman named Ruth. That's their mom. Their cousins, Megan and her sister, move in to the house after both of their parents die in a car accident. Megan's sister is incredibly injured. She can't walk because of the car accident, but she's slowly getting better. She has braces, all of that. Our protagonist, and this book is narrated in first person, so everything that happens we are seeing through his eyes, slowly begins to notice that Megan and her sister are being abused by Ruth and by Ruth's sons. And then the abuse begins to pick up, mostly centered around Megan. Megan is locked in a little bomb shelter in the basement, and then is tortured for the rest of the book, with more and more of the neighborhood children beginning to join in. There's one kid in the neighborhood named Eddie, I believe, who is a sociopath, and he kind of pioneers the way through a lot of the more extreme tortures that they inflict on her. Her sister is left mostly unharmed, but whenever Megan fails to do something that she's told, her sister is threatened with the same fate because her sister is smaller and less powerful. And our protagonist, who was friends with Megan and who was sweet on Megan, and Megan was sweet on him, watches all of this unfold, and it's described like he's watching television. That's literally how it is put. He copes by saying it was like a TV show almost. They scald her, they burn her on her genitals and on her other sensitive areas. They force feed her dog feces. They piss on her. They cut her repeatedly. A couple of neighborhood kids rub themselves against her. They repeatedly undress her and humiliate her, beat the shit out of her. And keep in mind, she is, I want to say 13, 14, and our protagonist is 12. So she's like, yeah, she's like 13, 14 in that range. And this goes on for months. And then our protagonist tries to help her escape. She manages to escape. But then she tries to save her sister as well, instead of just going and getting help. And she ends up getting caught and locked back in the basement, at which point Ruth lets one of her sons, not Junior, the other one, D-name, whatever his name is, she lets him rape her. And then our protagonist tries to run away, at which point the antagonists realize something is awry with him, and they throw him in the bomb shelter with Megan and her sister. They devise a plan to escape, which involves attacking the antagonists when they come back into the room. They execute this plan, but it doesn't work, and Ruth slams Megan's head into a concrete wall, which ends up killing her. And then very shortly after, a police officer arrives because our protagonist has been reported missing essentially by his parents, and it's the 50s, so the parent is involved. The parent shows up as well. I will also mention that Megan tried to let this police officer know months back about the abuse, and he didn't believe her. He showed up to the house, and that was it. That only made the abuse worse. Nothing happened. So now the same officer is showing up, finding Megan dead, and finding our protagonist and Megan's sister in the basement. And Megan's sister is injured, and our protagonist is weak and scared, and Megan's dead. As the cop is escorting everyone out of the house, essentially, our protagonist pushes Ruth down the stairs, which kills her. And it is then described how over the next little while, our protagonists and Megan's sister's testimony put the rest of the kids in jail, essentially. Um, and our protagonist was facing jail as well, but with Megan's sister's testimony, he was able to skirt around that essentially because there was no such thing as a um, an accomplice in juvenile court in the 50s. Uh, Everyone who gets punished is only put in juvenile detention until they're 18-ish. And then in present day, we learned that our protagonist has found a newspaper clipping which goes over one of Ruth's children, the youngest, Woofer. It goes over his crime spree, where he raped and murdered two adolescents before burning their bodies. So, yeah, yeah. I mean, my explanation doesn't really do half justice to the fucking book. I don't think any explanation could do any justice towards getting you to feel the impact of the book. I would highly recommend you read the book. But yeah, I mean, this book is sad. The book is fucked up. I would highly recommend the book. That's pretty much all I have to say. If you like the video, like the video. Comment, subscribe. I got more shit in the works. We're gonna be doing the Clicker series, or part of it until I can get the Rising, because the fourth book ties into the Rising. We're gonna be doing the Killing Kind series. Got a bunch of stuff lined up, and yeah, that's my opinions are my opinions. I am not attacking the author. I'm not attacking anyone. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, that's about it. See ya.